Thanks again for taking the time to talk to us. Maybe I could start with giving you a bit of a context for our talk today, because I'm not even sure who received what.
Yeah.
All right, great. So this course named Food and Travel is aimed at introducing our students to the concept of food in hospitality and travel. As part of this course, so far in the semester, we explored how food can be critical in creating value for our customers and even in creating a destination. So in the beginning, we used Margaret River, which is an extreme case of a very remote location that became prominent in the world of travel by establishing a really rich F&B offer with ramified width and depth of the culinary and beverage experiences, signature events, and cross-sector collaboration between travel agents and destination management agencies, wine cellars, breweries, distilleries, restaurants, and those things. And then we moved to talk about Dubrovnik and the offer in that area. And then after comparisons between Dubrovnik and Margaret River, we also emphasize differences. And then we moved to talking about another destination, which is in a more advanced stage of maturity, Tuscany. And we were particularly interested in its powerful focus on premium and luxury. And then we explored different origins and development and cultural significance of different alcoholic beverages, such as wine, craft beer, different brandies, gins, cocktail, cognac, and vodka and whatnot. And then we moved to exploring European, Middle Eastern, American, and Asian foods and cultures. And then I think, and I'm very grateful for having you here, because I find you to be an ideal guest speaker at this time, because we would like to talk to you on how you developed as a professional, how you developed to the level of prominence. We would like to hear your views of the changing world of hospitality and travel up until this present crisis, obviously, and then the new emerging world after this crisis, and maybe how you think the local Dalmatian food, at least in the context of a luxury project like Maslina Resort, should develop in order to respond to these trends and challenges. And then maybe toward the end, we would like to hear your views on why you think the young people should still study hospitality at this particular time, maybe in spite or perhaps precisely because of the current challenges. So it's a handful, but maybe we can start from one question to the next, if you agree.
For me, you've drawn a lot of differences in cultures. And for me, it's
Right.
not about the differences in cultures, but the similarities in cultures. You know, how if I'm given flour and water, what I'm going to come up with. So in Italy, flour and water brings pasta, right? And then in Asia, in parts of China and it's flour and water, but they heat up the water and they add it to the dough, and it makes a very different dough. But so I think the differences so to bring everything in together, I don't want to, in this time of strife and hardship for the world, it's time to bring all of us together as people, as opposed to drawing our differences. You know, I really believe
Correct.
I really believe that we are a people. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what, you know, if you have green hair or purple hair or red hair. We're all people, and it's about survival. And I think food ultimately is very basic. It's survival. And
Correct.
so if we can draw a similarity between all of what we eat, everything about what we do and how we eat and how we worship, then it makes us one humanity.
Right.
And
One world.
for me, that's super important, you know. And I go about drawing similarities between what we eat. In Italy, they make raviolis. In Russia, they make pomeltis. In Poland, they make pierogies. In the Middle East, they make mantis. In Asia, they make wontons, and it's all the same thing. We all work with flour, water, and some sort of filling.
Right.
And our similarities draw us together. And that's what we need to work on. And for me, that's so important, you know. And coming from Southeast Asia, America, wherever I come from, to Croatia, and having everyone sort of welcome me and everyone sort of taste this and taste that, and it's all the same. It's, you're left with meat and wind and salt, and you call it pierogies, you call it Hunan ham, you call it whatever, you know. It's all the same thing. It's all about preserving food so that you can actually survive the really, really hard and dry times. And so bringing in this whole conversation with travel in the industry, yes, you should travel, because how do you know otherwise, right? How do you know that you know, my grandmother's wontons taste like your grandmother's raviolis taste like his
Right.
grandmother's? Because it's all the same. It's flour, water, and whatever filling you have. And
Correct.
so that's what travel does. Travel equalizes us, makes all the same. I don't speak Croatian, but you go to Southeast Asia, you go to China, you go to Nepal, you don't speak the language, but you look at this thing and you recognize it, and you say, I know this thing, I will buy it, and I will eat it, and we're all the same.
Exactly. Thank you, Patricia. These initial thoughts of yours are really, really beautiful and inspiring. But can you please tell us of your background? How did you develop into a culinary professional? Because I hear that you studied biochemistry at Princeton, and then your life took a sudden turn toward culinary. Can you please tell us of your personal background and how it all came together to what you are today?
I never endeavored to get into the culinary business. It is, I don't know, serendipity, I don't know. I had always worked in sciences. So I went from high school where you're is that burning? Sorry, sorry. I have a pot with a stove in it.
That's okay.
And so at some point you know how when you're 14 and you have to choose arts or science, you choose something, so you go and you do whatever you do, and then you just keep going because you don't know what else to do. And that's the way I felt about my career in my other life. So I got my master's degree, and then I got my PhD, and then I worked for a company called Merck for a while, developing a blood substitute. And at some point I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's so boring and it's so not fulfilling, you know. And so I was going to go and get a postdoctorate degree, and it was sort of between seminars, you know, between sessions. And I took a course in New York at the New School for knife skills, because I've always found it very relaxing to dice, you know, sharpening knives and dicing. And so I took this course, and then when I was done with it, I thought, well, what the hell should I do? And I answered an ad in the New York Times for a chef. And I literally, having never interviewed for a chef's job in my life, at that point I was young and I had long black hair, and I showed up for my interview in a little black dress, like you show up for an interview.
Right.
And the chef hired me because he thought I was cute.
Good.
And then it never stopped. I was very, very fortunate because I worked for really fantastic chefs. I worked for people who helped me develop, who were growing in the field themselves, who, just amazing people. I was very fortunate. And
That's a
I think a lot of
fantastic.
it has to be luck, and a lot of it has to be being at the right place at the right time. I was in New York in 2000 when there were no female Asian chefs. It's all about the right place at the right time, and I was there. And so I'm good, but I'm not better than a lot of other people.
Maybe I will come back to your beginnings in New York in the year 2000 because of the disruption that happened in 2001 in New York, obviously, which is relevant to our situation globally today, I guess. But then you started to work like as a chef, and then you also became an entrepreneur, right? Did you have your own restaurant?
So I came back to New York in 2000, but prior to that, for the 15 years prior to that, I worked in California. I worked in, I just did the whole gamut and learned a lot, and was very fortunate to meet the right people. I think in this day and age, you can't be a chef without being an entrepreneur, without being a media presence, without knowing how to deal with press, without, it's all a bundle, right? So it's
Correct.
not back in, 1980 where a chef was just a chef and you were like, this is my restaurant, I have my mustache, and this is
Right.
because it doesn't work that way. We're all about selling who we are. We're all about social media presence. We're all about, it's a global world now, as opposed to a small village or so.
Right, correct. And then you also studied cooking in Southeast Asia, right? Am I correct?
My background, I'm Southeast Asian by birth. So I was born in Malaysia, and my family is Chinese Malaysian. And having grown up in the culture, I'm not afraid of using spices and herbs and strange ingredients. And I think for me, it came much more naturally because I know lemongrass. I know how to use lemongrass. Whereas a European chef who's never seen lemongrass and is meeting it for the first time, I think, takes it to one level, and I know how to temper it. And I think chefs like Jean-Georges von Richten and Gray Kunz, who recently just passed away, who grew up in Southeast Asia. Gray grew up in Singapore, and Jean-Georges grew up, spent his career in Thailand. You know what is too much and what's not enough. Similarly, for an Asian chef meeting truffles for the first time, I meet very many chefs in Asia, Southeast Asia, who hear about truffles and how wonderful it is, and then they get a bottle of truffle oil and they go glug 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 glug, and it's too much. It's not meant to be a glug glug glug. It's meant to be sexy and elusive and just sort of evocative, right? And that's the same thing with lemongrass. It's meant to be just a hint, something that sort of gives you a memory of something, as opposed to hit you in the face, because lemongrass, when it hits you in the face, is like the stuff you use to clean your stove,
Right. Correct.
And same with truffle oil, you know, hits you in the face as gasoline, you know, so it's meant to be tempered. Saffron, it's not, you're not meant to use a lot of it, you're meant to use just enough to sort of taste it and say, oh, it's something very subtle, something there, and you're not sure what it is. And I think that comes from, to a certain extent, travel, you know, being exposed to lemongrass, you know, coming here and walking around every day where we go walk from the apartment to Maslina. There is lavender and thyme and wild oregano, and it floats in the air, and it's just there. It's evocative. But if you take a bunch of lavender or a bunch of rosemary and throw it into a pot, and it's like,
Right, correct. Patricia, when you look back to your career as a chef, what were the main trends and how the world was changing? Because the restaurants of today, for example, we have a whole new trend toward local and creative and fresh and seasonal and open kitchens and communication and casual and all of that. And also in the genre of fine dining, which wasn't the case back in the 80s or 90s. These fine dining restaurants looked and felt much more strict, much more traditional, much more quote unquote stable in their menus. So how you experience this change and what you think were the main drivers of this change?
I think the main drivers of this change is the world that it is today, being sustainable, being conscious of who we work with. And so back in we hid our staff, chefs were hidden away. You know, when you think of the late 80s, the chefs were, it was always the maitre d' who was the person in front, and then it became the chef. We hid the people who were doing the work. We hid the fact that we were buying produce from guy next door, you know, 5 kilometers away, and it's not that way anymore. Our world is changing. We're getting to a point where I don't want to fly salmon in from Norway to Croatia when I have the most amazing fish in the sea right here. Why should I do it? So I need to learn how to use my local ingredients, my local product, and you know, it's about the world in a way getting bigger and getting smaller. So we're getting bigger in techniques, but getting smaller ingredients. So we've learned a lot of techniques from abroad, but then now we need to apply it to ingredients that are local. And that's how I feel about it. You know, it's tremendous amount of local ingredients that are not used. I walk every day and you look at these Scandinavian guys at Noma who are making spruce oil and we go out for walks every day. I'm like, oh, what's this? And we taste it and it's brilliant. Like today we were swimming on the side of the beach and I picked up some random weed and I tasted it. It's like, what is this? Why aren't we using it? Because it tastes like the sea.
Right.
And I think that's the way it has to go anymore. I don't want to import beef from, I don't know, use what's local.
Right. And how do you think the internet contributed to these trends? Because internet obviously gives us a great way of communicating, of cross-pollinating ideas, of maybe mixing things together, of perhaps even growing together. So how do you think the internet impacts your profession?
The internet is brilliant if you're not an entrepreneur. I hate things like Yelp or, you know, all the social medias that and the influences, you know, people who have no real legitimate say in anything, who come in and say, oh, but I love you, and you're brilliant, and suddenly you become this phenomenon. It's not, it shouldn't be that way, you know. It should be much more organic, and I think the internet and social media has made it not organic. You go from nothing to flash in 30 seconds, right? So you don't get a chance to grow into who you want to be. And that's my feeling about, and that's the negative of the internet. The positive is, if you're a young chef, somebody who's in the hotel travel industry, you can learn so much, right? You can travel to places you would never have hopes to travel to, and sort of not experience it personally, but vicariously. And
Right.
you know,
That's a nicely put.
but having said this, everyone should travel. Everyone. You cannot underestimate the value of going somewhere, and I can tell you how wonderful the air smells in Bar right now, or I can tell you how it smells in the summer in Cambodia when it's dry and crusty and you can smell the dust. But until you experience it yourself, you can't. You can imagine, but it's not the same. And
Right.
travel is the great equalizer. If you can break bread with somebody, literally, you know, have a meal with somebody across the table, and not even speak the same language, just share the same experience, you haven't experienced it.
Right.
And
Right.
so travel.
Right. That's how we immerse and soak in other cultures. This is how we perhaps reflect on our own cultural background and our own habits. And this is perhaps how we grow and become better people, through learning about others, because it's such a great reflection in my mind. So in this globalized world that obviously gives us so many good opportunities, such as traveling and meeting people and learning about different cultures, we have these unwanted consequences of globalization, such as global epidemics, for instance. And before we talk about the impact of Corona on the world of travel, and maybe how you see uh, the next few years in the travel industry, can you please tell us of your experience of the impact that 9/11 had on hospitality in New York, perhaps?
9/11 was really interesting. For me, it's very personal because I lived close enough to it. I could smell the impact of 9/11. We were personally, as a business, impacted by 9/11. And it was very short lasting versus this, which is many months and across the globe. I was very, very fortunate to work with business partners who are very far-sighted. And one of the things he said was, keep everyone working, but do volunteer work. So we fed firefighters, we fed, service people, we fed everyone. Whoever needed food, our job was to go out and feed them. And one of the things I said to Zoran when this happened was, what can we do for Starograd as a community? How do we help the local community? How do we make our presence felt? And because it's such a small community, and already it was very tight. It was very hard to sort of do any more to help the community. We I literally said, I'll go mow somebody's lawn, like I will go and, but, it's not the same. And I think 9/11 for me personally in New York made New York City a much nicer place. It made it a kinder, gentler place. So 9/11 was 2001. And then August, the following year, there was a massive blackout. And there had been a blackout way back in the Dark Ages in the 70s, way back in the 70s, where the city basically erupted into this sort of people pillaging and looting and stuff. And this blackout that happened in August 14th of 2002, I guess. None of that happened. It became this giant party. It was people stopping traffic in the streets so that other people could pass, and restaurants pulling out grills and cooking food on the side of the street. And it was just so calm. And I think that if 9/11 hadn't happened, the blackout of 2002 would have been a disaster. But because it happened, it made us a kind of gentler city. New Yorkers just became much nicer. You didn't be like, it wasn't like, oh, it's over there, deal with it. We were much more open. And I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen with the world today. This is going to bring us all together and make us a tighter community as human beings, as opposed to tearing us apart. That's the hope, and having listened to, so yesterday was Palm Sunday, and Palm Sunday is a very important day in the Christian calendar, or the Catholic calendar. But it's also, Passover is not far away, Ramadan is not far away. So,
right.
and how it's going to bring all three major religions together is a very hopeful thing. And I'm hoping that the world will become a much more all-encompassing, gentler place.
Right, me too. And in the short term, Patricia, how do you think the world of travel is going to be impacted by this? There's obviously in the media in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of talk about the immediate impact of the coronavirus. We can see that the airlines are struggling, major hospitality, hotel companies are struggling. We can see that the booking companies are struggling too. So everybody is in a sort of a predicament currently. And how do you think in the short term, perhaps in the next year or so, how do you think the world of travel is going to be impacted by the global epidemics and the lockdown?
Well, it depends how long the lockdown is going to go for, right? So if it ends in 3 weeks, it completely changes the picture. Because in Europe, at least we still have a summer. There's still, but I think, one of the things Zoran talks about is in visualizing what's going to happen, and we do need to visualize to a certain extent. We need to be optimistic about what the future is going to bring, because if we don't, then we all curl up and die, and wither away. But there has to be an optimism and a vision of what we're going to do in the next 3 months, and the next 4 months, and the next 6 months, next year. And what I think that the first sector to come back will be luxury. The people who have the financial resource to travel, who are not traveling now, are going to be so sick of hiding in their homes and you know, being around their families that once it's done, they're going to go and seek out somewhere that they can go and enjoy the luxury they want somewhere else, and not just luxury. I don't want to go into New York or Paris or Hong Kong or Beijing, where there are millions of other people. I want to go somewhere that's secluded, elusive, you know, so that I can so that I can enjoy the luxury I'm used to with not a lot of people around. And so I think, you know, Messlina is very well situated for that. You know, we're very luxury, we're close to every major city in Europe, and, you know, we're very secluded.
Right, right. So think that those off the beaten path places, less crowds, and maybe more personalized things would fare better in the short period of time. Yeah. Okay. And the big cities or these mass destinations are probably be impacted quite a bit, at least in the short term.
I don't even know if it's a short-term thing. I think it might be a medium-term thing. You know, I think that it's going to be a while for industry. I worry about friends in New York constantly. So my friends in New York who are in the business, it's not going to be easy to cut to. If you own a small restaurant that's been closed for 6 months, it's not going to be easy to come back. It's not. It's going to be really painful, and you know, and I think the hotel, travel, culinary industry is going to change. And what I think that's going to be really interesting is that as much as you know, people talk about food trucks and street food, and so that low impact, low financial impact as a business owner, those things are going to thrive. You know, for me to go out and buy a truck and buy 50 kilos of 50 kilos, I'm sorry, 20 kilos of beef and grill it and have it gone that day is much more viable than for me to open a brick and mortar restaurant where I have to pay rent and, you know, so things like food trucks and are going to be, I think, where the world is going to go.
Right, and maybe personalized catering, definitely asset light options, right?
And it's specialized. So all I do is make sandwiches or coffee or you know whatever is local, and that's what's happened has happened in Southeast Asia for the longest time. You know, the man on the side of the street will only sell one item. He's made it for every day for him, all his life, for the last 40 years. This is what he knows, and he does it very well, and he knows how to streamline it, and I think that's the way it's going to go.
Right, which makes it all the more difficult in some ways in large cities, because the supply chain is very tedious, and you need kind of economy of scale to reach a certain business performance. So maybe I don't know, I reflected long and hard of the impacts of the internet in the last 20-25 years. And I remember I have a background in international relations, and back 20 or over years ago when I was studying, it was believed that the internet would bring a more even spread of population, a more even spread of human geography. It actually, up until now, it actually brought the opposite, much bigger concentration of populations. But maybe this will have a completely different impact on the society. And just to support your thinking that places like New York would be impacted, the news that I'm getting from New York in the last few days, few weeks, but especially in the last few days, are shockingly disturbing. I can see that um, there's lots of problem over there, and even like the very high-end hotels that you would not expect to be hit so hard, such as Carlisle and those iconic hotels for the elite, have been impacted big time with very uncertain outcomes in as you say, in the short term, but also in the medium term. So who knows what will happen after the dust has.
It's economic, right? So you can be very well established, but unless you have inflowing revenue, it doesn't matter. And
Right.
it's a revenue stream. So I think that the small guy who has a street truck who has very low impact on him personally can sort of close down and not worry about staffing and insurance and paying rent and those are the guys who are going to survive. You know, I think it's the street vendors and the who will actually do well in the long run.
This is so inspiring because I must say that you are moving wheels in my head as we speak, because the internet, if anything, is brought us the age of disruptions. So everybody can count on being disrupted at any point in time. Let's think, for example, how Airbnb and those concepts have had a disruptive effect on the hotel industry. And of course, the digital on Kodak and all these big behemoths of the past that are now, that have now gone extinct. And I really think that you may be onto something really true here, because the flexible, the adaptable, the asset light, even guerrilla concepts can prove to be much more resilient in this huge storm of change that the internet has brought to us. And that's not going to go away, obviously. The impacts can differ according to different, as time change, but the main principle is, if anything, is going to persist and become even more dramatic in the future as things speed up even more.
Yeah, the world is getting smaller, but it's also getting bigger, but it's also getting smaller. And you know, so we have more access to information, but ultimately it's the 5 blocks within you that, you know, is important, you know. So it's an interesting time we live in.
Oh, definitely. And toward the end of our official part, let me ask you, and this is the question that I get so frequently these days. Why should young people study hospitality at this particular time?
I can only speak of it at a culinary point of view. Don't do it unless you love it. If you're forcing yourself to do it, then it's not the right thing to do. You really have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy the people you do it with. You really have to be curious about what you're doing. You know, you have to be, whether it's curiosity about where your ingredients come from, or why people are coming to your region, you have to embrace it and sort of make it, it's not, I don't go home every night and go to sleep and forget about everything. I go to sleep at night and think about, oh, Andrea said this, and how can I make it work? Not consciously, but subconsciously even. And unless you sort of embrace it, it's a lifestyle. I think travel, culinary, it's a lifestyle. This is who you are. This is what you do. You enjoy exploring new cultures. You enjoy exploring new places, new styles of food, new whatever, you know, and this is who you are. This is what it is. If you're just doing it because you think it's a good job, maybe not such a good idea, and then explore something else that you actually enjoy, whether it's a graffiti artist or, you know, because this is your life, you know. I don't fall asleep. I don't leave my job at the end of the day thinking I'm no longer going to think about food. I think about food constantly.
Right.
So, you know, so if you're going to
Right.
get into travel and you're thinking about it constantly, you're thinking about your next adventure, what are you going to do next? How are you going to do it? And that's just, it's a lifestyle. Embrace it or find something else that you really enjoy. And you know, listen, I started doing this in science, and I enjoyed it. It was stimulating, but it's not who it just didn't resonate with me. And find something that resonates with you and do it. And not everyone's a natural chef. Not everyone's a natural you know, hotelier or whatever. But when it's too forced and it's not natural, you've lost it.
Correct. Correct. And I think back to the leitmotif of our discussion in this age of disruptions, this emotional involvement and the soul that you're giving to your job will help you to survive and soldier on in the time of challenge and strife, such as the current one. So without passion, if you're in it only for the money, you
Or
will
because you think that's what
probably
you should be doing, or
not see the purpose.
no, no.
Right, correct. So Patricia, thanks again. Thank you so much for our talk today. It was such a pleasure and honor to have you in the class, and I wish you all the best. I wish you a long stay in our neck of the woods, and I hope that you and I will meet in person sometime very soon, right after the lockdown, actually.
I love your neck of the woods. I mean, seriously, it's one of the most beautiful places I've been to. It's hard to remember that there's so much strife going on in the world when you go out for a walk, and you know, it's just gorgeous and it's beautiful and everyone's smiling to a certain extent, you know, whoever you meet. And you don't meet a lot of people, but you know, it's a wonderful country and I'm very happy to be here.
And we are fortunate to have you with us. So until then, I'd like to greet you and wave bye-bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you.